Welcome. Coincidences, often strange and unusual occurrences, which just so happen to tie in with one another. Whether it be the timing or the meaning behind them, they can often leave us with a strange feeling within. Was it some kind of sign? Was it meant to be? Who knows? But those coincidences can remind us of events we may have went through, or it can remind us of people we know of or once knew. Those times can be very, very strange. Even I have experienced them. Now, as far as the Kenny Veach Cave mystery goes, there are some very strange coincidences there as well. One of which is military intervention and their reaction to Kenny Veach. The military wanted to take over the land Kenny Veach hiked in, and the same place where the supposed infamous Cave was. The question is, why was the military so keen on taking that land? And why did they make multiple attempts to do so? So on screen, we have Google Earth, similar to the map analysis breakdown videos in the past by me. I'll be doing the same again, and I'll be presenting to you the land owned by military, which is restricted to the general public, and the proposed land that would have been taken over by military. But firstly, let's look at the restricted border and the land controlled already by military. If we zoom in down here, ignore the blue lines for now. We are facing north currently, and we are near to the highway. I believe it's the 93 highway. I may be wrong, but it doesn't quite show on here. But as a sense of location, nearby you've got the Southern Desert Correctional Centre. Okay. So, if I just flip the screen, bear in mind I'm on mobile, so it's a bit difficult. If I flip it just like that, you can see the sheer range and depth of land controlled by military. To put it in perspective, everything on the left-hand side of the screen, past the red line, is controlled, is owned by military, and is restricted to general public. If you step over it, you'll be in trouble. And everything on the right-hand side here can be accessible by public, hence why you've got that hike route in yellow, which Kenny Veach did, and many other people have done as well. Additionally, as reference, I believe this is Alamo Road. If I just zoom in, I believe this is Alamo Road, and this is the road Scott Natal drove up on one of his hikes, if you remember. Now, as Scott did reference in one of his previous videos when he was covering maps, he did show the border, which was near to the road, and as you can see, it does get very near. Now, this does cross over a little bit, that might just be a slight mistake, but if we just zoom out, you can see how far it stretches. It goes over here to the left, keeps on going, and then I think you've got some kind of airport, airstrip, keeps on going up to a certain point. So it is quite vast. I hope I'm showing this clearly, and I hope you can follow. I'm trying my best at this moment in time. So now, if we follow this north to get an idea of how far it reaches the border, the restricted one, it goes all the way up here, up and down the mountains, keeps on going. And as you can see in the distance, one of the key markers, you've got Takeover Peak, which is one of really the only locations you can get to see Area 51 the clearest, and I believe the closest you can get to seeing Area 51. But you've got to climb all the way up to the top. Adventures with Christian, he did that himself, and that's how he recorded it. So yes, there's the top of Takeover Peak, highlighted in that yellow marker. And as you can see, that red restricted border goes all the way up to it. Now, if we just look back at the way we came, just get an idea of the range, you can see how far it is from here all the way back and past the M Cave hike route. So it clearly shows that the military has already got enough land for whatever they do. Additionally, as you can see in the distance, if we look east, we've got Area 51, and that's within the restricted land. So that makes perfect sense to why. Now, if we carry on slightly east the border, and then going back up north, just flip the screen for a second. There we go. And it keeps going in and out because there is an actual road here which is accessible. And it keeps on going. And as you can see, one key location which people refer to is Rachel. I don't know if that's a town, just the name of the area. And I believe that's where that Area 51 or extraterrestrial diner is at, where people have been. I believe Jeff Clark said Really Robin has been there as well for his videos when he did Storm Area 51. So as you can see, keeps on going, kind of like northeast, I would say. In and out. And then I think it might continue from there. I didn't want to show the full thing because it was a bit too long-winded. But we'll just rotate the screen, looking at it south. Just the sheer range, the military own, all of it. As you can see, there's a lot of land there. So the fact that military wanted more land makes you wonder why, surely. Well, let's just return back to the area of Geographic Canyon. And if I just tap this, we are now facing north again. Okay. So we just flip it back. You can see the boundaries and the land. Okay. And we just zoom in here. We've got Area 51, which I've shown in a few videos. And then all the land where they'll test and use it for all kinds of stuff, including bombing ranges. Now, one thing to make note of is, I remember when Silverheels was saying something about exploring in this area or so, I think, round here or so. I believe that's a bombing range, or I think that's what Jeff Clark argued. There's a bombing range in this area or so. Most likely on the left-hand side, past the red line, the border. Yeah. So I hope I've explained that, and I hope you understand the sheer range and extent to what the military already own. But it doesn't end there, because the military wanted an extra 300,000, I believe, of land. They wanted more. Now, this is where it links to Kenny Veach and the M Cave hike route. Because if we zoom in to this spot, as you can see, the M Cave hike route. Key points of interest, the parking spot. Then, heading north, the mine shaft and where the phone and loose change was found. That of to be Kenny Veach's personal possessions. And then, over Wild Horse Pass, and then turning left. And just before you get down to Picture Canyon, the supposed covered M Cave, the area, the spot where Kenny was, Sean was, Silverheels, Jeff Clark, Jay Chuck, all of them who have passed by, Aquachigger, and other people as well. This is where the covered cave, the M Cave, supposedly was at, and for some time was argued to be, including the keyhole as well, where we had that mystery at the time. And then, just a little bit north, was where the sword and tent was found by Scott Natal, and also captured, unknown to the individual at the time, by Jay Silverheels, who got a picture when he was stood over this way on some of the mountains, hills. So, what significance does this have with military? Well, if I zoom out, you can see that blue line. What is that blue line? Well, if we go all the way back up this way, heading north, which runs in parallel to a highway, I think, the 95 highway, if I'm not mistaken. Apologies about those black boxes. Unfortunately, there must be some glitching. So if we look here, we're not too far from Takeover Peak and the National Wildlife Refuge. So, this area here. So the area in between the red line and the blue line, all this in between was proposed by military that they were going to take over all of this area. They were going to expand from this side and move on to controlling this area, this perimeter. So everything you see in between the red and blue lines is land that would have been taken by military. And this is far north. This is past the Hidden Forest Trail. So what that basically means is they would have taken over that as well. And I'll show you. So if we head backwards, we head back south whilst facing north, you can see the sheer, extent of how much they would have took over. They would have took over Dead Horse Ridge. We just keep on going. And it also runs in parallel to that spine of all those mountains, which is where the Hayford Peak is, Hidden Forest Ridge and Sheep Peak. And it keeps on going all the way back here, all the way back to this point. From there to here, where that X is. So because of that, as you can see, the hike route itself would have been owned and controlled by military. Now, the reason why that is interesting is because this is obviously the area where the M Cave supposedly was at. And because Kenny Veach publicly said about it and how he was going to go back, after his disappearance and then the military wanting to take over the land, it did make a few people question, get suspicious and think maybe military, whether it be Area 51 over here, Area 51, or even Nellis Air Force Base, which is, which is here. Even though the main base is here, within the outskirts of Las Vegas, they still operate and still control land in this area, whether they use it for testing aircraft, certain operations, and all kinds of training. along with Area 51. So with all that involvement, and then wanting all this land in between this, what do you call it, rectangle, long rectangle, all the way down to here, controlling and restricting general public from being able to hike in this area, it made you think, are they hiding something? Is there something in this whole area or somewhere that there's some kind of cave? Did it really exist? And the military heard about Kenny Veach publicly announce it, so they wanted to take over the land quick before anyone found it, and that's why Kenny Veach disappeared in the process. Almost like some kind of process of elimination, preventing anyone from discovering the truth. Or is there another cave or some other thing out there? We'll get to that shortly. But as you can see, they've already got enough land. They already control enough, and yet they wanted more, and quite a bit to say the least. Why did they need it? Well, one of the arguments was something to do with bombing and testing equipment. So, one more point I want to put forth, because there was resistance. And as I said, this was proposed land to take over, so it never really happened. And the reason why is because there was resistance and they just weren't successful in overturning stuff to get their way. In the process, though, there was multiple attempts, okay? So we start off down here. That marker, X to X, that was the first takeover attempt. The first attempt basically covered all land in between the red and blue lines, all the land they were going to take over and control and restrict from the general public, meaning the M Cave hike route, Joe May Canyon, Picture Canyon, a little bit of the ravines going up to Sheep Peak, Hidden Forest Ridge, Hidden Forest Trail, all the way up here as well, Dead Horse Ridge, would have been controlled and owned by military, okay? But obviously, they failed, were unsuccessful. So what they decided to do at another point in time was propose a second takeover attempt. Now this one, less suspicious. They moved it back further up north. As you can see by the red X, this was the second takeover attempt, which basically meant anything in between the red and blue lines and anything past heading north, this blue line, so looking up this way, Dead Horse Ridge and that area would have been taken over by military. So yes, it would have meant that everything before it, such as Hidden Forest Trail, and the M Cave hike route would have been still open to public. So there's that to take in mind. Additionally, one thing to make note of, as said, this is a rough representation because there were differing ideas and takeover attempts, but this is like a general idea of what they would have owned and controlled, okay? So this is the best we could find because there is different maps, there's different versions, but this is like the general idea of what they would have controlled. So, with all that in mind, it is kind of suspicious when you think about it because of the area Kenny Veach being in and the key locations which would have become inaccessible. And that is why the likes of Jeff Clark and some other hikers at some point in time wanted to get out there, wanted to explore. Like in 2017, Jeff Clark, how he said he needed to get out there before it was too late. So it was around about then, and maybe a bit before, where the military were really going at it when trying to get their way. Now, as said though, they weren't successful. But there is still time where they may reattempt to take over. And if not that, it's just a simple idea that the timing, the coincidence, the area, to be precise, where they wanted to have control, kind of is a little bit suspicious. What is so important about this area? Aside from like the likes of J. Chuck saying it's a spiritual place and it's very beautiful, aside from all that, aside from the wildlife, visually and everything like that, what was so important about this key area being taken over by military? How it starts from there and was originally going to end down here. Why? Well, let's get into a few reasons and explanations. So before I explain any further, I just wanted to share with you some information and material Jeff Clark found when he researched into it previously. So on screen right now is like an example map of basically the land which is restricted and owned currently by military. As said, that on the left hand side past the red marker, the red line, the border here. You've got Nellis Air Force Range, you've got Area 51, Groom Lake, and kind of parallel to that, Takeover Peak, as I said, which is accessible. That's the closest you can get to seeing Area 51. You've got the Nevada Test Site, Nellis Air Force Range. So everything that is grayed out is owned by military. So it really highlights the extensive nature to what they own. And all those red lines, the thinner red lines, are private roads. As you can see, the bottom corner of the screen, left-hand side, you've basically got a key. Military airfield, civilian airfield, community, public road in black, private road in a thin red line, state boundary and county boundary. One additional thing I just wanted to make note of is I did make a mistake earlier in the video. When I was down here near Mercury on that highway, it wasn't the 93, it was the 95 highway. So I just wanted to correct that. The 93 highway is actually the one I thought was the 95, which you can see just there, where it says 93, which is parallel to that proposed land that would have been taken over. So yeah, that's one example picture. Move on to this one, kind of similar as you can see, and it shows the attempt made and the second attempt made of taking over, which involves the M Cave mine, where that area supposedly was, and all the other key points of interest all taken over. Similar to kind of like how I've mapped it out in my own way. And then this one is just, another map, another example. And you can see covers quite a lot of distance. The current military border and the proposed military border in yellow. So yes, let's move on to some additional information to tie in to motives of why military wanted to take over the land. So Jeff Clark said, I see more articles up about the military losing in Congress on the vote to take over that chunk of the Desert National Wildlife Refuge. This map shows the second version, as the first one had them taking more on the east of Alamo Road, straight east of Creech. Like I showed in the maps I already sent you, the military kept changing the borders that they wanted whenever some group would object, but their goal was to get it all at the end of the day. This map calls it the Alamo expansion. They also showed why they supposedly needed it, because they wanted to drop more bombs. These are the new signs they are using on the borders. So we just scroll down here. This is the new sign, which is being used. Don't know exact what date, it doesn't quite say. I'm not quite sure what area this is in, but it says, warning, controlled area. It is unlawful to enter this area without permission of the installation commander. Section 21, okay. Whilst on this installation, all personnel and the property under their control are subject to search. I'm sure I've seen this sign before, or at least the message of the sign, similar. So I don't know what year this dates back to, but the sign itself does look more newish to maybe older signs we may have seen previously. So there's that to take in mind. This is the map Jeff Clark was on about just beforehand. So yes, Alamo expansion, 227,000 acres. Through expansion, 17,000. Existing withdrawn land, 2.9 million acres. So there's a lot going on here. This is an example picture of, military aircraft, the use of bombing runs, testing out weapons and explosives. If it's like a flyby straight up, because of the shaping of that proposed area they wanted taking over,
so
they could just do a flyby straight up
into account,
north, straight line,
in addition to what Jeff
all the
Clark
way down
added.
the middle of
Is it
that
true
land
that the military had a genuine, simple motive of they needed that specific piece of land just so they could have more room to bomb and blow up? Well, that is somewhat questionable, aside from the coincidence with Kenny Veach and M Cave. Why do they need that specific range and area when they already have enough space? Now, one argument you could put forth is because of multiple military bases. Nellis Air Force, Area 51, and another base in addition. They need that space, they need that range to individually test out their operations, equipment and vehicles, and that's why they needed to expand. Maybe, but it's kind of hard to believe when this kind of ties in with the mystery of Kenny Veach and the M Cave, surely. Because isn't it weird how they only wanted to start taking over the land just after Kenny Veach discussed about the M Cave and then disappeared? Kind of coincidental timing, is it not? They had all the time in the past to do it, but they chose to specifically do it after Kenny went out on his final hike, supposedly. So yes, there is questioning around that. The area itself makes you wonder, is there anything there that hasn't been found by anyone but the military know about? If we look back to exploring abandoned mines and unusual places, Frank went to that area where that supposed M Cave was. We don't know the coordinates, we don't know where exactly, but I don't believe it's Sheep Range, Jerme Canyon, but could it be further north? I'm not quite sure. However, kind of coincidental there, how a military guy wanted to find that cave. He was unable to at the time, but he wanted to. And that sign, the Area 51 sign found in that cave, a little bit strange, is it not? It makes you think, places like that, is that why the military want to take over the land? Because they're key spots for whatever. Maybe they are pre-existing bases, pre-existing outpost, underground, maybe, or potential spots for them making a cave, making tunnels, underground connections. Who knows? It makes you think the current range of Jerme Canyon, maybe Picture Canyon. Is there a possibility that somewhere within that environment there is the M Cave? And if not that, due to recent information coming out, could there simply be a cave out there which is similar in mystery, might be used by military or somebody else? Whether it be a cave, a base, some kind of entrance to an underground mine, an underground base, whatever it may be. Because let's not forget Charles Hall, I believe his name was, the individual that worked at Nellis Air Force Base, who said how in the Nevada desert, in the mountains, there is an entrance to an underground base to where the tall whites, the aliens, operated in and hung out. Well, if we're basing it off that or something similar, just maybe the land that was going to be taken over might have had something to do with it, or something else just as mysterious. You never know, because as far as this mystery goes, with all the coincidences and strange mysteries, it does make you question more than usual cases. Now, there's one final additional piece of information I wanted to add back in, which we previously came across, and that is a comment left by Gene. Now, despite the current questioning and tension with some people and one's suspicion, Gene did leave an interesting comment in the past, I believe in response to Accord Research, a group of individuals that went out into the Nevada desert and located the supposed M cave. But it's interesting what Gene said about a research group and what they found. Let me share that with you. If we look at the comment section of the Accord video I covered, Gene did leave an interesting comment, and it was about the original video mentioned. It pertains to an investigation conducted by a group of researchers back in the 70s. The group wasn't a UFO group, but was investigating strange radio signals coming out of various locations east of Alamo Road. The group used different radio directional signals to pinpoint a location in Dead Man Canyon. The group traced strange signals 1243.160 GHz, 1243.106 GHz, and 1243.060 GHz. Those frequencies were not used by any known agencies back in the 70s. They were very high band microwave frequencies. During the group's investigation, the US Air Force became involved and started an investigation into the group's activities back close to Nellis Test and Training Range. The group voluntarily left the area and never finished their investigation as to the source of the radio signals. In 1980, this same group found a cave in Dead Man Canyon, just 17 miles east of the base perimeter, that contained numerous military radio sets. The group took photographs and left the area, thinking the cave contained military field radio stations. Those photographs were contained in a book written by the group leader in 1986. However, the book is no longer in print. Well, that is interesting. The key location, that of Dead Man Canyon and Nellis Test and Training Range, Nellis Air Force Base getting involved, sending them off on their own ways. Maybe they found something they weren't supposed to. If we just scroll down a bit more and check the replies, he did reply to Jeff and said, could very well be why the government wants to take over all land in Sheep Range. Reason why, if we link back with Sheep Range, that area was going to be taken over by military, as I showed to you on Google Earth. So it makes sense. Now, Dead Man Canyon, it's been talked about a few times, but I can't remember. Has anyone been there? Been up it? Explored? If there is a cave up Dead Man Canyon, is it still there? Into the thread, Jean replied and said the book that was written was called Strange Signals, Area 51. The group was the no-name team, led by Arthur Kramer. At the end of the day, coincidence or not, it does seem a little strange how the military really wanted to take over that precise location. They could have chose elsewhere, but they picked Sheep Range, Jomay Canyon, and further on. And that's what their original intent was on their first takeover attempt. With the knowledge of potential research groups in the past investigating the area which would have been taken over, such as Dead Man Canyon, and finding that cave with the radio signals and, I guess, equipment. With Nellis Air Force stepping in with resistance and force, telling them to move away, to leave. Could it all indirectly tie in? Even if Kenny Veach and the M Cave is in doubt, in severe questioning, the disappearance and the existence of the cave itself, could this entire thing indirectly lead to a completely different mystery which we don't fully know of at this moment? Maybe Kenny Veach was in an area where there was something going on. Maybe research groups in the past were in an area where military were wary of. And that is why, in time, it was the catalyst. Kenny's involvement in the area was the catalyst. Kenny announcing publicly was the catalyst to military attempting to take over the land, to prevent people from exploring anymore, and to prevent people from maybe finding out secrets. You never know. It does make you wonder though, what happened to Accord Research? And the research group, where did they go? What happened to them? What happened to Kramer, the leader? Upon searching online to the best of my ability, I could not find the name of the individual, nor the name of the group or the book published at the time. However, I'm sure one of you might be able to do a bit of research yourself, and we may be able to get to the bottom of that, or get a little bit closer to understanding what exactly happened to them. I feel though, at the end of the day, as said, military involvement once again. The nature, the timing, the location, all makes you think, is there more going on than what meets the eye? Maybe. But for now, that is all. If there are any more updates, I shall let you know. If you find any updates, research yourself, feel free to let me know. And in general, if you have any opinions or suggestions around this mystery of military intervention, feel free to leave a comment down below. And so, that is it for now. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.